Hi, this is Roxy Rose, and I'm back doing another video. This is part 2 of being alone for the holidays for the midlife transitioner. If you haven't seen part 1, please go back and see part 1, because part 2 really won't make any sense to you otherwise. So in part 1, I gave you a little glimpse of what my self-critic can be like, and I know that some people out there have a much worse and much more destructive self-critic, and we really need to know how to get them under control. And by under control, I do not mean stuffing them into a footlocker under lock and key, or squashing them with positive affirmation. Although, like I said, affirmations can be really helpful. I use them all the time myself. But what we need to do is we need to acknowledge that they are just simply one part of our many personalities. They're just simply one part of them. And what's important to know is that they are doing a job, and they're doing it the only way they know how. And unfortunately, it's not a very fun way they get our attention. But they're really trying to protect us. From a very young age, we are taught that we want to be accepted by society, and we want to be presentable, whatever our gender is. We want to be, if we're male, we want to be a good provider, and if we're female, we want to be a good housekeeper, at least the generation that I was brought up in. And there's all these aspects of that we're taught from our parents and society of who we need to be in order to be accepted by others, in particularly a mate and friends. And we're taught that if we don't do or don't behave a certain way, that we will be not acceptable to society, we won't have friends, and we will be alone. And God knows none of us want to be alone when we're old. There's just this horrible mental scenario that goes on when we think about getting old, and we think about going into the hospital alone, and we think about having just a slow deterioration of our health and being alone during those times. Or we might picture another scenario of us just being in a dark old house and being alone and not having anybody to help us get around, etc. So we're very much afraid of that possibility. So that is what's important to understand about the critic. The critic, like I said, is doing a job the only way it knows how, and that is with disgusting comments and sarcasm, so that we won't be alone when we get older. And really, that's the underlying fear. And it's hard to believe that the critic that's been so hard on us is actually just really afraid. And it's sending out us warning signals to us that he or she doesn't want to be alone. And it really is inspired by the little child that is within us. And it's really acting on his or her behalf. But I'm not going to get into the little child, because it just would unravel into this huge conceptual discussion. So what we need to acknowledge is that our critic is really afraid. And you need to listen to it. Give it a voice. Give it a soapbox to stand on for the moment, like a undisciplined child. Let it speak its piece. And actually, when you listen to it, it could be quite hilarious. The way it talks, and it could be very, very demonic and very treacherous and disgusting. But it can also almost can make you laugh at some of the desperate attempts that it tries to get your attention. So that's a way of isolating yourself from it. Oh, I said isolating. I meant insulating. We certainly don't want to isolate ourselves from the self-critic. We want to insulate ourselves. Just give ourselves a small little barrier between us. Just a little space. just a little airspace to know that I'm over here, I am the aware ego, I am in charge of my personalities, they work for me. This critic of mine actually is under my direction, my parenting, and that it is only one small piece, although it seems like it is a great big piece sometimes. It is just one small piece of what makes me a whole person. And I see it, I acknowledge it, and I also know it's just desperately trying to do a job. And that's all. I don't try to change its opinion. I don't try to squash its opinion. I don't try to lock it up and not hear it, stick my fingers in my ear. I'm not going to try to do that. I'm going to, in fact, listen to it. And I'll give you an example. And this is quite funny, and it had me laughing. I drove by the post office, our local post office, and it's just a little local post office, so you drive by pretty slow. And there was a truck waiting to pull out on the street. And in the truck, I was going slow enough and seeing the driver was just an old man in the car. And as I drove past, the old man reached up and scratched his ear. Just like that. Nothing more. But immediately my critic jumped in and imagined this scenario of this old man as I drove by doing this, as if I caused him to throw up or something. I made him sick. Now I realized that, and actually the visualization of the guy sticking his finger down his throat was more real after I drove past. That was a stronger feeling than the actual feeling of this guy that wasn't paying attention to me at all, could care less about me. He wanted to pull out on the street. That's all his concern was. But the funny thing is my visual picture of the guy with his finger down his throat was more apparent and stronger than what actually took place. And I realized that right at that time, and I just had to laugh. It still makes me laugh. That's just hilarious. That's my critic criticizing me, thinking that nobody's ever going to find me attractive, and that people don't, that think I don't belong, and that when I go out in public that I make people sick. Come on, that's not the truth. The guy didn't stick his finger down his throat, and I don't repulse people. So that's an example of how our runaway critic could happen, could react, and by giving it its voice and persona, and insulating ourselves from it just with a little space, how we could see it and perceive it. Now, getting back to being alone for the holidays. When your critic decides to give you such a hard time about being alone, you have to acknowledge it. But be careful. Make sure that you insulate yourself slightly. Know that it's just a part of you. And know that it's just doing a job. It's just sounding off this shrieking, irritating warning signal. And it's doing it the only way that it knows how to get your attention. And then acknowledge what it is. Now, for instance, mine is very much afraid of being alone. And your critic might be afraid of other things. You know, it could involve finances. And my critic's concerned about that, because aren't we all? It could involve a lot of different things. So your critic is not going to be exactly the same as mine. So during the holidays, and when you start to feel lonely, when the house gets dark and quiet and cold sometimes, I acknowledge that critic is not us. It's just one of the many parts of us. And I also want to tell you that in the future I hope to give more constructive information regarding the many personalities of us that drive us, that cause us to succeed and cause us to fail. But right now I think the important thing is addressing that critic during the holiday and trying to get it under control. Also, some homework for you. And I know for some it's going to feel a bit uncomfortable. And you have to do it according to you and how you are, and how your financial situation is, and how your situation at home is. But for the holidays, don't forget to get yourself something. I know, as simplistic as that seems, do go out and get yourself something. I know for me, Roxy Rose is going to go buy her a big bouquet of roses, because roses are something I identify with, and I think they're such a luxury. I am definitely going to go get myself a big bouquet of roses. And I think I'm going to get myself a card this year. And I'm going to fill it out, and I'm going to list all those nice qualities that I believe that I have as a human being. And I'll send myself that card this year. And I hope that you could do yourself the same thing. Take a moment out of your busy week and show yourself some appreciation. Maybe take yourself out to that nice restaurant that you always wanted to go, and order that meal that you kind of feel a bit reserved about. Splurge a little bit if your pocketbook can afford it, and do something nice for yourself. You deserve it, and the fact that it's coming from you does not diminish the gift at all. Do something really nice. So that's your homework during the holidays, is to do something really nice for yourself and acknowledge that great person. And I don't care who you are, what your social standings are. You have some great qualities, and they may be tremendously great, and they may be subtly great, but they're nonetheless great. I mean, they can be taking in a stray cat, or feeding a poor sparrow that's dropped from the nest a little early. Just little things. There's things that in every person that you can acknowledge, and you should. Sometimes we get so busy, and our critic is so hard on us, we can't see those little things that we've done, or we do, or we're capable of. Maybe it's a talent that you possess, singing. Even if it's only in the shower, give yourself some credit and acknowledge the talents that you have, and appreciate yourself, because everyone is appreciable. So that's your homework, and I wish that I could, I wish that all the lonely people could unite and get together and give each other a hug. And I'm sorry that we can't do that. But know that you can be alone for the holidays, and you don't have to be lonely. And take that horrible critic of yours, and I'm sorry to call it horrible, because actually in the future I hope that I could teach you to become an ally to your critic, and a good parent to it, and learn how to use it constructively in our lives. But meanwhile, we need to just simply insulate ourselves just by giving ourselves a little space, knowing that it's separate from us and it's not who we are, and listen to it, and know and realize what the underlying intent is that critic is trying to tell us, and know that you are a lovable person, and you have many great qualities. I know you do, and Roxy Rose loves you too. So I sure hope that I could be helpful now and then. This has been Roxy Rose, and I look forward to talking with you again soon. And if you ever care to, go ahead and send me an email directly. myroxyrose@gmail.com. That's myroxyrose@gmail.com. I always like the letters. So I will see you soon on another video. Bye-bye.